Welcome to the Vital Spirit podcast. I'm Dr. Kelly Livingston, a naturopathic physician and your guide to a new health reality, one that connects body, mind, and spirit. Together, we'll dive deep into the art and science of holistic healing. Through working with hundreds of women through midlife transitions, I've discovered something profound. Most of our physical and emotional challenges are rooted in a maladaptive stress response. And true healing begins when we regulate our nervous system. Each episode will explore complex health topics in simple, empowering ways, uncover the deeper wisdom within each of us, and share practical tools for nervous system regulation to help you awaken your vital force and create lasting wellness. So, if you're ready to reconnect with yourself, your health, and your purpose, let's begin this journey together so you can experience life more fully human and deeply healed. As I said in our first part of this episode, I felt like I had to do this topic justice, and so this episode did run a little bit longer than usual, so we broke it down into two parts. So welcome back, and we're going to dive into part 2 today. There have been seasons in my life when depression didn't gently knock, it arrived like a collapse. Low mood and depression is something I've struggled with my whole life. I'm not saying I feel that way right now, but it is something that I hold very dear to my heart because it's been an internal knowledge-seeking endeavor and true healing journey for my own self as well. So in my early 20s, I struggled with depression. As I mentioned, I was handed a pill. No other further questions were asked. During medical school, I struggled with a bout of depression, and again, profoundly, when I first entered into perimenopause, I would say about 6 years ago. So at that point, I would often self-medicate with alcohol to either numb pain or feel joy, which I learned was really based on my nervous system state at that moment. But at that point in life, I knew all the tools. I was a doctor. I was the healer for everyone else. I understood physiology and mindset and nutrition and the nervous system. I had spent so much of my time in medical school researching depression and mood disorders. I legitimately knew any and every alternative and pharmaceutical option. But none of that protected me from the reality that my hormones were shifting, my sleep was disrupted, then we had COVID happening, my nervous system was overwhelmed, and I was a single parent for the first time, carrying the emotional weight of so many things that were going on in my life. And depression came back in because I wasn't prioritizing all of the nature cure and self-care that really creates a buffer to preventing depression relapse for me personally. So on the outside, I was definitely functional. I was still seeing patients, still running my clinic, still being a mom. But inside, I definitely felt my vitality and my inner light dimming. I was absolutely burnt out with my practice. I had kind of created a practice where I was very much on call for patients nonstop, and this was not sustainable. And I realized I wasn't feeling anything. I remember sitting on the floor one night and my daughter had gone to sleep, and I was just like literally just collapsed internally. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel sadness. I didn't feel fear. I didn't feel hope. I just felt numb. And I was going through a lot of other traumatic events at that point that, again, I'll do some deeper sharing as I get used to sharing these intimate details of my life with strangers on the internet. But essentially my career, which has been such a guiding light, it's given me such purpose in my life, wasn't even bringing me joy anymore. And there was this voice inside my deeper knowing that said, you know what this is. This is physiology. This is mitochondrial exhaustion. This is your nervous system and dorsal vagal shutdown. You know your nervous system patterns. This is not who you are, but this is time to ask for help. And through that realization, I realized, okay, I can't bypass here. I have to listen. I have to listen to my body, to my gut, to my fatigue, to my emotions that I don't really want to feel, to my longing for something better for my daughter and I've got to figure this out. So I asked for help from the people I felt safe being honest with. And as usual, I relied heavily on myself. It is a fatal flaw of mine, I'll do it myself kind of energy. But I really had to slow down. I had to kind of pull back a little bit on the things that were depleting me. And I had to focus on the things that were renewing me. And it was truly the daily, humble, foundational habits that I talk about with every patient that really pulled me back. It was focusing on coherence, nourishment, getting completely off of alcohol, rebuilding my gut health, focusing on nutritive teas, relying on things like lemon balm and passion flower and nettle tea. I had some low iron at that point. I think I've shared that with you guys. Getting outside in the sun. I realized at that point, because I was working so much, I was not getting outside enough. I was not taking my walks. I was not practicing what I preach. I had to reprioritize all of that. Now, for about almost 4 years, I have a daily yoga practice. Then it was kind of sporadic, fitted in when I could in between patients and picking up my daughter. I really focused on my breathwork practice, both invigorating and calming, depending on what I needed in the moment. I got really clear on turning screens off at night. And at that point, I had no desire to be on social media. Right now, I obviously use it to promote the podcast and connect with all of you, but I was very clear on the fact that I did not want to be on screens or technology unless I had to for work. And I really did a lot of deep inner child work, a lot of gratitude work. I loved, or I still love and use Byron Katie's The Work and Carolyn Mace's work. You've heard me talk about her before. So there was a lot of trauma work. I did EMDR with my therapist. There was a lot of kind of cleaning up the loose ends of things that I maybe thought I had dealt with and just really hadn't. And this worked for me. I'm not saying that your journey will look the same, but I know what it feels like to be depressed, and it deserves reverence, not reductionism. And during some of my own descents in life, I've learned something that really has permanently changed the way I understand mood, joy, resilience, because these are things, especially joy, these are things that have been hard for me to cultivate. I've worked hard on this, and I truly believe that happiness is not a circumstance, it's a nervous system orientation. So we're culturally conditioned to believe things like, I'll be happy when I get a new job or more income. I'll be happy when my hormones are rebalanced. I'll be happy when my kids are older and I have more time for myself. I'll be happy when I finally blippity blue, fill in the blanks, right? But the real grounded physiological happiness isn't when, it's in spite of. I am happy despite the unanswered questions, despite this midlife transition, despite the grief, despite the exhaustion, despite the uncertainty of the next chapter. This is not bypassing. You can't bypass this. This is based in biology. So at that point, I was doing a lot of work with heart math. So heart math research has shown that when your heart enters coherence, which is a smooth, harmonious sine wave rhythm, your body immediately shifts into lowered cortisol, improved DHEA, improved immune signaling, decreased inflammatory cytokines, balanced vagal tone, restored prefrontal cortex functioning, and improved emotional flexibility, which increases your capacity for joy. And simple coherence exercises are not that complicated. I've walked you guys through some before, so you can just look up heart math coherence or coherent breathing. And this is not positive thinking. Mindset is key, but this is not positive thinking or manifestation. This is neurophysiological state shifting. And it is one of the fastest ways to access joy, I think. And one of the easiest ways to enter into coherence is through gratitude. There's tons of research on this. Not performative gratitude, like you're saying what you're thankful for in front of people so they think you're a good person. Not forced gratitude. I do force my daughter to tell me one good thing that's happened every single day, but not gratitude with just listing things in a journal, although reciting 3 good things at the end of the day, again, is very helpful. But I mean true gratitude, living in the moment with mindfulness and gratitude. So when you make your cup of tea, holding that cup of tea and being grateful that you get to experience the warmth in your hands, you get to smell the lemon balm, you get to taste it, you get to be in that moment. How lucky are you? Gratitude for the sunlight on your face or the light coming in through a window. Anyone that practices yoga with me knows that I love to sit in a window and absorb the sun, kind of like a cat. The feeling of gratitude for your child's hand in yours. My daughter got me through some of my darkest moments, and I'm sure I mess up some things as a parent, and we work on repair, but I don't mean that I'm relying on her to reparent me. I just mean that I am so grateful for that little being, and being able to be in moments with her, holding her hand, truly feeling that gratitude, taking one slow breath in and out, feeling the softness of a blanket or a hug from a pet, or experiencing the sound of the birds in the morning and really being in that moment of gratitude. That's what I'm talking about. And we might call these glimmers. You can look for the glimmers in life to balance out some of the triggers and resurfacing of traumas. But essentially, these microscopic acts of noticing send a biological message. And that message is, I am safe enough to receive this moment. And safety is what allows the nervous system to rise out of depression. Not serotonin, not willpower, safety. Safety is what I was missing in those lowest moments of depression in my life. This is why in my own healing, coherence was a turning point, because coherence creates the internal conditions where joy can return even before external circumstances change. And that is everything. So now we're going to go a little deeper. We're going to go somewhere that is really rarely talked about in clinical settings, somewhere that matters profoundly in the world of women's healing. SSRIs do something very effectively and very predictably. They flatten emotional intensity. SSRIs flatten emotions. Now, sometimes in an acute crisis, this is necessary and even life-saving. Absolutely. But long-term, there is a profound cost. Women describe it in many ways. I feel like I'm watching my life instead of living it. I'm stable, but I'm not me. I don't cry anymore, but I also don't laugh. I can't access my intuition like I used to. This one kills me. I'm functioning, but I'm not alive. This is not psychological failure, it's pharmacology. SSRIs can blunt intuition. They blunt emotional range. They blunt embodiment, that felt sense of being in your body. They blunt empathy, sensitivity, creativity, spiritual depth, meaning making, and inner guidance. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not something that I want to hand over to a teenager without warning them. And this makes sense physiologically, right? You can't selectively numb pain. When you numb pain, you numb joy. When you numb despair, you numb meaning. This is why I talk so much about how the deeper that sorrow carves into your being, the more joy you can contain. I'm not saying to walk around in deep sorrow, but when you blunt one, you blunt the other. And this is why many women will feel like, yeah, I've been surviving, but I'm not thriving. I'm not transforming. I'm not self-actualizing. I'm not doing what I'm meant to do. Because transformation requires feeling. Integration requires feeling. Healing requires feeling. Consciousness expansion requires feeling. I can't wait to interview my friend and colleague, Dr. Jen Krebs-Rapkin. She wrote the book, The Feeling Muscle. I shared about it on social media the other day because time and time again, I am seeing patients in my office who were never taught how to feel, how to navigate feelings, and that's not their fault. But this is a problem. This is why in research on psychedelics, which I wrote my thesis on in 2013 before the psychedelic explosion, so we'll definitely have an episode on psychedelics on their own, but this is why in research in psychedelics, we see the opposite effect. We see increased emotional range, increased meaning in life, increased connection, increased introspection, increased consciousness, increased neuroplasticity, and increased capacity for love. And I'm not saying this to push psychedelics, only to say there are modalities that open consciousness rather than constrict it. And to me, consciousness is everything. That's a separate episode, But here I do want to make the point that SSRI-induced numbness is not the same as healing. It is a timeout from feeling, and eventually women want their full aliveness back. So again, I will have a full episode on depression, what works, etc. But I do want to touch on what does the research show actually works. So let's see what the latest science says, because honestly, it's really empowering. So movement as medicine, a 2024 Umbrella review compared dozens of treatments for depression, and the results were extraordinary. Walking and jogging, as effective as SSRIs. Yoga, nearly as effective. Strength training, same effect size as SSRIs. CBT, which is not movement, but cognitive behavioral therapy, can be used to get into a movement routine. It can be helpful in getting over the resistance to movement, is more effective than SSRIs. SSRIs, small to moderate effect. So movement changes brain-derived neurotropic factor, that growth factor for your brain, dopamine, mitochondrial capacity, vagal tone. It reduces inflammation. It primes the endocannabinoid system. It balances out cortisol rhythms. It helps with insulin sensitivity. Movement isn't a nice idea if you have low mood or depression. It is literally an antidepressant. CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, also consistently reduces depressive symptoms, as well as depth psychotherapy. So you've heard me talk about depth psychology. Depth psychology itself helps women understand the roots of their patterns. You've heard me talk about this before. And somatic and polyvagal therapies can help to resolve trauma physiology that might be one of the roots of both nervous system dysregulation and subsequent depression. These aren't alternatives. These are clinically validated. I've got to talk about yoga and meditation briefly. Yoga has been shown to regulate GABA, that's your calming neurotransmitter, inhibitory neurotransmitter, vagal tone. I can go on and on about that. Serotonin receptor sensitivity, inflammatory cytokines, and heart rate variability. Meditation alters what's called the default mode network. So this is the same neural network implicated in depression. It's also what psychedelics act on. Now, I've got to mention nutrition too. Nutrition is extremely effective for depression or depressive symptoms. Nutritional psychiatry is not fringe anymore, thankfully. So we now know that diets high in sugar and processed foods will increase depression. The Mediterranean diet significantly reduces depression. Omega-3s outperform SSRIs in some trials. Magnesium reduces anxiety and depression. Zinc improves neurotransmission, which can help with depression. Vitamin D, which is essential for limbic system regulation, improves depressive symptoms. B vitamins, which are required for serotonin, dopamine, and norepinephrine synthesis, and which are often deficient or low in depression, are helpful, especially when low. So these are things we can test for. CoQ10, which is depleted by antidepressants, is essential for brain energy and can also be helpful in depression. And this is the type of psychiatry or psychology or mind-body medicine or mind-body-spirit medicine that I want women to know exists. Now, if you're hearing this and you're like, oh my gosh, I want to consider getting off my SSRI, do not do that on your own. You do not do that on your own. You discuss this with your prescribing physician. Please take this very seriously. And I am not your doctor, so I am not telling you to do that. If you are currently taking an SSRI, please hear me clearly. You are also not doing anything wrong. You are not failing. There is absolutely no shame here. In my practice, I work with women who are on medication, transitioning, tapering. There is zero judgment. This is a 100% safe space. I just want you to know this information. So here's what the research and clinical experience shows helps when you are considering tapering or transitioning off of medication. First, heal the gut. You must heal the gut. The gut-brain axis needs to be healthy. Repair intestinal permeability, reduce inflammation, stabilize blood sugar, replete B vitamins, zinc, CoQ10, and magnesium, restore mitochondrial function, regulate the nervous system, support vagal tone, and normalize sleep architecture. While doing this, I'm often focusing with women on balancing hormones, absolutely moving our body every single day, practicing coherence, and using CBT and or somatic therapy at the same time. Tapering needs to be done slowly, much more slowly than most doctors recommend. And you do need a plan, support, options, and most importantly, hope that you can do this. So here's what I want every woman listening to take in. You are 100% not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. You are not weak and you are not chemically defective. You are a human being whose biology, history, hormones, gut, nervous system, and spirit are in conversation. Depression is not a single problem with a single cause or a single solution. It is a multifaceted message from the body, the brain, and the psyche. Something needs support. Something needs to be metabolized. Something needs to be seen. Something in your life, your physiology, your story, or your spirit is asking for rearrangement. And you were never meant to carry this alone. You were never meant to white knuckle your way through sadness or shutdown. You were never meant to be prescribed a pill without being given context, options, explanations, or alternatives. What you do deserve is informed consent, full body healing, nervous system safety first, hormone understanding, microbiome support, trauma-informed care, meaning making, spiritual permission, and most importantly, hope. This is what it means to live life fully human and deeply healed. Not to suppress symptoms, but to understand them. Not to mute yourself, but to remember yourself. Not to numb your intuition, but to come home to it. Depression is not giving up. It's your body saying, well, your body-mind saying, I cannot keep sprinting in sympathetic overdrive. I'm going to collapse into dorsal vagal. Or I cannot keep performing strength when I don't feel strong on the inside. I cannot pretend to be awake when I'm exhausted on a cellular level. I cannot metabolize one more unresolved trauma or experience without support. Depression is often dorsal vagal shutdown, HPA axis exhaustion, cortisol issues. Cortisol dysregulation is so huge in depression. Inflammatory signaling. Depression is gut-brain dysbiosis. It is often mitochondrial fatigue. Depression is hormone fluctuations, and it is nervous system depletion. And this is where the deeper layer comes in, because it is also often a spiritual descent. It is a time of transformation and transition and initiation. So if you did listen to episode 36, The Dark Night of the Soul, then you know this. Depression is often a threshold, a liminal space, a dismantling of what is no longer aligned for you, and a slowing down so the psyche can reorient. It is a collapse that becomes a composting of your identity. It is absolutely very often an initiation. I am not discounting if you are in the depths of your depression and you need a pharmaceutical aid in that moment. I'm not saying that, but I am saying there are other aspects to this journey. And when we numb the descent, we lose the meaning it carries and we don't make it out to the other side. And I want to be very clear that medication is not a moral choice. It is a tool. What I'm advocating for here is informed consent. What I'm teaching you is the physiology behind your experience, because knowledge is power, and that understanding will help you in this transformation. What I am offering you is context big enough to hold your whole story, to make it make sense. So if you choose to stay on your medication as a patient, I always support that. If you choose to taper, you must taper slowly with the support of the prescribing physician, because I don't prescribe. And absolutely, we do that alongside gut healing, nutrient repletion, nervous system regulation, and true root cause care. So please, there is no shame here, only agency. You deserve a full toolkit, not just a prescription. Because depression is not a serotonin deficiency. It is a system asking for repair. Gut, brain, immune system, hormones, mitochondria, nervous system, spirit, and meaning. This is why root cause naturopathic medicine changes lives. This is why women feel seen in the office at Roots Deep Medicine and with other providers who practice this way. This is why this medicine exists. My depression or my experience of the symptoms of depression is not my identity. It is a doorway. It is a doorway to understand my biology, my physiology, my story and history, my nervous system, my needs, and it is a doorway to the next chapter. There has never been a low point in my life that I haven't found something better at the end that gave it meaning. Absolutely, in my life, I've had very deep, painful moments, which I'm starting to share more with you guys. And directly attached to that pain is my purpose. And I want you to know that you are not walking this alone. Whew. So I know that was a lot. It's a little bit of a heavy episode. But if this resonated with you, I want to make sure that you go back and listen to episode 15 on inflammatory depression, what's really behind low mood and perimenopause. Episode 16, the gut brain anxiety loop, healing anxiety from the inside out. And episode 36, the dark night of the soul, descent, healing, and the alchemy of midlife. These three together create a more full map into the physiology, psychology, and soul of mental health, essentially. And if you want to begin regulating your nervous system immediately, you can download my Vagal Tone Guide and the Seeds of Health Journal, which is your daily nervous system and lifestyle regulation guide. And if you're ready to heal depression at the root through microbiome repair, nervous system regulation, hormone support, trauma integration, and spiritual reorientation, then you can explore working with me. When we work together inside the Vital Spirit Method, I provide a container for these transformational processes. And my signature mind, body, spirit healing framework for women in midlife really was born through not only my clinical experience working with women and mental health diagnoses, but also my personal experience. So as always, this episode is supported by Roots Deep Medicine, my clinic, and the Vital Spirit Method. So please share it with someone you love who you think might benefit from hearing this. And please download and subscribe so that you don't miss further episodes. And remember, you deserve clarity, you deserve safety, you deserve support, you deserve answers, you deserve hope, you deserve to feel fully alive again. Your depression is not a flaw, it's an invitation. And you are not walking through this doorway alone. As usual, I'm here to be your guide, or at least a guidepost on your healing journey. Have a great day.